You're listening to Alcoholics Alive, where recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous share their experience on how they live AA as a way of life. None of our participants get paid or speak for AA. Here are your hosts, Shank and Wayne. If you listened to last week's episode, we hope this week you know the difference between step 10 and 11. And you'll stop calling your morning or your evening retiring at night step 10. It's actually step 11.
Good time of year to know.
It's a good time. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because the holidays are coming up, Shank. It's so hard to stay sober during the holidays. We need to throw out some tricks and tips to people.
That's right.
On how to stay sober. Here's the tip. Whatever you did yesterday to stay sober, do that on Christmas and you'll be all right. How about that? Hey, real quick, we've gotten some feedback on the Plain Language Big Book from several listeners, and we've had some requests to do some episodes on what we call the PLBB. So we will have an episode out next week. It's just kind of an overview of the new book. So stay tuned for that. Our guest today is all the way from Goochland, Virginia. Marcie, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on again.
We're glad to have you on again. You told me not to say that, but you just
I know, and I
mentioned it.
just said.
Marcie is a previous guest, but none of us can remember what the topic was.
No.
So anyway, good to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Marcie. I'm an alcoholic hailing all the way from Goochland, which is halfway between Richmond and Charlottesville, which is a very important. Anyway, I got sober, started drinking when I was 8, got sober when I was 20. And I have thought about that last time I drank and why that was my last drunk and versus any other time that I drank. And I don't know. I don't know why the last time I drank was the last time I drank. I don't know why I was done when I was done. And I think that's one of the many great mysteries of alcoholics is because if we could get someone else to stop, most of us have at least one person in our lives that we would splash that on them so they would stop for good and for all. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, been sober since April 17th, 1995. So I'm 50 years old. Never, ever thought I would see 50, let alone see 25, 29 years after I got sober. It's amazing to me that I'm still alive.
Well, we're glad you're alive.
Thanks.
And we're glad you quit drinking.
I made that decision all on my own.
We're glad that you got sober and before they started giving out medallions.
Which is a lie. I do have a medallion for that first year and on.
So listen, Shank went into the archives and we figured out you were on season 4, episode 2. The title was We Are Going. This is when we were taking weird statements out of the big book.
It was the promises.
Oh, that's right. It was promises. Yeah. We're going to new freedom and a new happiness. That's what you did.
There you go.
So we became so free and happy, we forgot what you did. So anyway, Shank, what's our topic today?
Our topic today is high bottom alcoholic versus low bottom alcoholic. So if you've never heard these terms, you may only be reading the text Alcoholics Anonymous. Maybe you haven't been to enough meetings. Maybe you didn't go to 90/90. I don't know. But I have a couple of readings. And the first one comes from the book Alcoholics Anonymous at page 33. It's from the 4th edition, 2001. And it says, to be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantities some of us have. This is particularly true of women. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. All right. And another reading that I have from this one is actually from the 12 by 12.
Okay. You're really living on the edge now.
And this is from page 23. And it says, alcoholics who still had their health, their families, their jobs, and even two cars in the garage began to recognize their alcoholism. As this trend grew, they were joined by young people who were scarcely more than potential alcoholics. They were spared that last 10 or 15 years of literal hell the rest of us had gone through. Since step one requires an admission that our lives have become unmanageable, how could such people as these take this step? It was obviously necessary to raise the bottom the rest of us had hit to the point where it would hit them.
What in the world?
So, um, there's another reading, okay, from page 44 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. So that is probably more fitting than high bottom or low bottom. However, as I was trying to define these two, I know what my personal definitions would be. I cannot really tell you when I heard the terms high bottom or low bottom, but I do know at some point people started telling me that I was a low bottom and that I was a real alcoholic. And I did not really understand that. Maybe I was 2 or 3 years sober. I didn't understand it at the time. Maybe I understood it for a little while. Now I'm back to, I don't get it. But here's what I could find. For a high bottom, and these definitions are kind of more treatment center-esque, if you will. A high bottom or high functioning alcoholic is someone who has a problematic relationship with drinking while still being able to maintain a normal life. While high functioning alcoholics, named HFAs, can experience low bottoms, they may not have a family or home to lose, which can limit the type of bottom they experience. HFAs can continue to relapse after hitting a low bottom, so it's important for them to reach out for help. Okay, and for a low bottom, this is in contrast to the HFA.
HFA.
A low bottom is a term used to describe the reality of addiction, which can include job loss, relationship breakdowns, financial ruin, and serious health issues. So I don't know if any of that is helpful at all. In my personal opinion, not that y'all asked, but in my personal opinion, the way that I would probably define as I don't know, people in my area might define high bottom, low bottom. High bottom as someone that doesn't lose anything, and then a low bottom is someone that goes to jail, prison, long-term treatment center, or dies. So that would be the Shank definition there. Now, Marcie, my first question for you is, when you arrived to Alcoholics Anonymous, when you joined AA, did anyone help you decide if you were a high bottom alcoholic or a low bottom alcoholic?
Now, I arrived to Alcoholics Anonymous long before I joined. I got here in 1989 when I was 14 years old, looked around and knew I did not belong. I was 16, 17, and very clearly do not belong with old 20-something-year-olds and people who were showered and had careers. Because Alcoholics Anonymous was not founded by under the bridge brown paper bag drinkers. It was founded by a doctor and a stockbroker who are clearly fancy. And Alcoholics Anonymous is not for street punk kids. It's for career-minded individuals who bathe regularly.
I like that.
And I had no business being there. So it's interesting because what I did here, I don't know what was said, but what I did here was go home and be a good little girl. And I spilled more than you drank. And I'm positive both of those are true. Thankfully, when I was 20, somebody explained to me what alcoholism is. And we didn't even talk about bottom, high, low, or otherwise. I'm positive I'm a high bottom alcoholic. I never lost a house or a car or a career, or I never even lost custody of any of my children. Never lost a marriage. I never had any of those things. So I think by the definition you read, I am a very high bottom alcoholic. And I think that it doesn't matter. It's interesting that we even have this as a discussion and yet define alcoholism as the inability to control the amount we take. It's very interesting to me that it even comes up because it's somewhere in our book, and I was being all fancy and I brought my big book, and I don't know where it is, but it talks about a fellow that was drinking one, or living, one might say, only to drink. And that is what I've never met anyone who comes to Alcoholics Anonymous that gets and stays sober that isn't living just to drink. And I am sponsoring a woman, I don't think she's sober now, that keeps drinking. And I think she's gone to, I've taken her to treatment a couple of times. And I've never met anyone that wants to stay sober as desperately as this woman. And she can't. And then I've met people, one of the women that worked with me when I first got sober, she said that she had a stemware story and she only drank wine out of really fancy stemware. And then I go to the penitentiary and there are women who aren't even wearing clothes that they're the first owner of. In fact, whatever comes out of the laundry, I don't even know whose name's on their undergarments. And I'm like, that's manageable and that makes sense to you? Well, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, that's perfect. That if you're fine, then I think all that Alcoholics Anonymous is going to do is annoy you, because in here we talk about the opposite, being completely powerless, having no ability. I couldn't tell what was really going on and what was going on. And I can talk more about that, but I think that answers when you were talking about the high bottom and low bottom. I don't remember that being talked about until I was sober for a few years. And it doesn't even define alcoholism, though.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't. I think Shank probably defined it best by reading that passage from, was it page 44?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, from We Agnostics. If you can't control your drinking, you're probably alcoholic. Yeah. Or if you've honestly tried to stop and you can't, you're probably an alcoholic. It's I don't recall anybody personally asking me, if I thought I was high or low, or helping me to decide that. I do remember it being discussed a lot, and when I first got sober, like in meetings, especially in a lot of those clubhouse type meetings, they would talk about high bottom and low bottom, and you would hear those things about you can get off the elevator at any time and stuff like that. And I think that, I mean, what people asked me was, "Hey, do you want to quit drinking?"
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? And you can have the obsession to drink and even the allergy to alcohol, regardless of your social standing or regardless of your material possessions and things like that. I find it interesting on your readings that actually in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't think it has anything in there about a bottom,
Not that I
right?
found.
Yeah, it does mention many, many times what an alcoholic is and is not. By the way, there's a lot of descriptions in there that tells you what
Mhm.
alcoholism is not, which is important. But I don't think it ever mentions any kind of bottom. It's more of a spiritual readiness. Are you spiritually bankrupt, and are you ready to? It probably didn't use the word bankrupt. Are you ready to quit and do something different? Are you beyond human aid? Now, when the 12 and 12 comes out, you read that one passage, and to me, the first step in the 12 and 12, it's one of the worst written pieces of AA literature ever. It just is. It just makes no sense. And it talks about us raising the bottom so other people
Mhm.
can hit it. I mean, how do you what? I mean,
That's a lot of power.
it just yeah, it just really doesn't make sense to me. And the other thing that I'll get off this in a second. The other thing that 12 and 12 does, it implies that all of the early members of AA and even the writers of the book were like low bottom, like street people. It does imply that. It's not
Yeah,
true.
that's right.
To Marcy's point, the dude was a stockbroker, had a degree, or went to law school anyway.
That's
Guy
right.
was, dude was a surgeon. He still had a job. He still had his
Mhm.
house. He, I mean, he had a car.
Mhm.
And
And a wife.
a lot of those early members were, some of them were wealthy.
Mhm.
They, right, they got sober because they couldn't control their drinking and it was causing them problems. Now I
Mhm.
know we like putting labels on stuff nowadays. So, I mean, if you had to, I guess, use the word bottom, then you can, but I don't, it just seems like it's unnecessary to me.
I find it interesting because I think most people would probably label me a low bottom alcoholic because I went to prison and I'm a felon and, whatever. Like I've had all these consequences due to my drinking. However, before like the night that I had a car accident, committed crimes, I hadn't lost anything. Like I didn't lose everything until one night. And even still after that, yeah, I lost my freedom, I lost a lot, whatever. But there are plenty of women, to Marcy's point, that I've been incarcerated with that I take meetings back into, who by all appearances, it's like this has to be the worst of the worst. This is the lowest bottom. The number of people that come up to me and are just like, oh, that was my worst fear of having to go to prison. And listen, I know that that is true for those people, but I'm just saying that doesn't mean that you're going to get and stay sober.
Mhm.
It just doesn't.
That's
Like that
right.
is not the end for a lot of people. And it says in the book that some people will go on to the bitter end. And a lot of times, to me, I see so many people going on to the bitter end and they have jobs and they have houses and they have wives or husbands and cars and they go to their kids' soccer games, but they are deeply
Mhm.
miserable and cannot stop drinking and have not admitted they're an alcoholic and have not reached that point of desperation. And like that's all I know. I had reached a point of absolute desperation. And when I arrived in the rooms of AA and I was told, like, we have a solution, it doesn't matter that you're going to prison, that you've committed these crimes, that your life's going to get much worse before it gets better. Do you do you want to give this a chance?
Mhm.
Yep.
Like have you reached that point of being willing to identify yourself as an alcoholic and then take some actions that we've taken? And so I was
Mhm.
willing to do that. And so it's just interesting to me. I've people probably told me, Marcy, that they spilled more, than I drank, but the common thing, I guess, around here would be, that my time in prison doesn't count.
That's right. Yeah.
Or
Yes.
doesn't count towards my sobriety, or just like things like that. And it really really got under my skin for
Mhm.
several years. um like, why are you saying this to me? Or like, well, you're a real alcoholic. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? And it's just because
Mhm.
like all I did was drink, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like such a dig. um but the high bottom, low bottom, I don't remember hearing about that until, I don't know, I was a few years sober and just being like, that doesn't, who cares?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Why is it relevant?
Well, it's interesting. I would question what anonymity means because when we tell our stories, we talk about in a general way what we were like. And I'll tell you, it gets on my nerves when I hear, "Well, I'm up here to talk about what it was like." Mm-mm, no. No, it doesn't matter what it was like. What was I
Yeah.
like?
Hmm.
What am I like now? How am I treating people today sober? Because I've treated people worse sober, I would submit, than I did drinking because I have more
Hmm.
influence sober than I ever had drinking.
Yep.
And so you brought up the woman that you're trying to help. My next question, who may or may not get it, should we insist someone hit bottom before we help them?
I can't tell anyone what to do. I'm just here to share my experience and my strength and my hope. I have no advice to give. It's another pet peeve is when we're sharing and people say, this is what I did. I don't suggest you do it. Doesn't matter what you suggest.
That's
All I
right.
have to share is my experience. We're going to do exactly what we're going to, there's nothing I can tell you that's going to change your actions because you need to live a life that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Best I can tell, Shank, that you can never tell. So let's assume hitting bottom is actually a thing. How can you tell if somebody's hit bottom or not? I mean, we've
Mhm.
all worked with people that we thought, man, there's no way this person's going to go back to drinking. And what happens?
Mhm.
Yep.
They go back to drinking. Then they come back
Or
and, oh,
there's
huh?
or there's no way they're going to get sober.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
And
You,
10 years later, that joker's still sober.
That's right.
yeah. Yeah. You can't, you cannot predict it. You cannot. So, I think the questions in the book are legitimate, right? Hey, do you want to quit drinking? If a person says that they do, and then we ask them if they want help, and they say yes, then we should try to help them. Yeah,
Well, and I think something similar to this that I question, and it's just is not my experience. I've got sober and I've stayed sober, but when people are like, I had to go out and do a little more research, or I had to lose some more, or do this or that. Like I know that that is their experience, but it's also kind of like, but did you? Like I don't understand that
Mhm.
when people say it. I'm like, I don't know. Something about that sounds odd to
yeah.
me.
It's because it's odd. Yeah,
If I had the choice, if I had the power of choice,
Right.
then I mean,
If I
there
had the
have
power
been
of choice,
plenty
I
of,
wouldn't be in AA.
that's
I
right.
would
There have
be
been
doing
plenty of
something else,
times
baby.
I wanted to drink. In fact, I was a year and a half sober and I didn't think I was an alcoholic. And I set out to go drink. And I went to a bar with my brother and I was ready to drink and I did not drink. And I do not know why, except that is what cemented for me the knowledge that I am an alcoholic. I have absolutely no control over alcohol. I I was ready to drink
yeah.
and I did not.
Well, the PLBB would say that was your higher power doing those things for you that you couldn't do otherwise.
Well, I'm glad that some people haven't asked Jeeves for a God. It seems like
Exactly.
I am asked to be subservient to my creator, not my creator to me. But who
Yeah.
knows? I mean, we all have our
Wow.
own experiences.
Well,
That's
that's
right.
right. That's
Um,
exactly right.
And
so
who am
this
I to argue with yours?
this next question, I guess, is more kind of opinion, maybe, but all of this is, I guess. Are low bottom alcoholics more likely to get sober and stay sober?
Well, let's define low bottom.
There you
If
go.
I have lost everything worthwhile to me in life, absolutely. I have never worked with somebody who has not lost everything worthwhile to them in life. And it's interesting because I will ask the question in different ways. Are you willing to do anything? And if somebody says to me, I don't want to get a divorce, which I mean, the weirdest things have come up. I don't want to quit my job. I'm like,
Hmm.
sister, I'm not asking you to do any of that. But I'll listen because what they're telling me they're not willing to do every time I have, this is just my experience. I'm positive other people have other experiences, but every time somebody has come to me and told me what they are not willing to do to stay sober, they have not stayed sober
It's
because
a
it
fact.
doesn't,
That's
it's not, I'm not asking anyone to divorce or quit their job or, but I am willing to do anything to stay where I have been given freedom. And I haven't been asked to do anything bizarre. Some of the things actually have looked really bizarre that I have, I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to go do. And And some of it has been really bizarre. I mean, it talks about it in our big book. Sometimes that when we think we're being led by the spirit, it's a little nutsy cuckoo. I forgot it's something.
That's how it
I
should be rewritten. Nutsy cuckoo.
yeah,
I
that's
understand that.
Nutsy
I,
cuckoo is good.
I have been led to go do some shit that I was like, what in the world is happening? I don't even know
Mhm.
how I got here. It was just bizarre. But I think all of if we were to define low bottom as a willingness to do anything, then absolutely somebody who's lost all control and is willing to do absolutely anything to get and stay sober. Yep, all of those people I've seen get and stay sober.
What do you think, Wayne?
Well, I think that people that stay sober are people that are willing and that are open minded to taking actions. Does that mean they're low bottom? Maybe it does. Maybe that's the definition of low bottom. And I don't know, but I've seen a lot of people that were really bad off that couldn't stay sober.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of people that were wealthy and had all kinds of material stuff and they can't stay sober. I've seen people try to buy sobriety. It just, they can't. And, but I have seen other people like that had everything, but there was something inside of them that they were spiritually, desperate, and they were willing to take actions, and they stayed sober. So I think people stay sober by their willingness to grow spiritually and take the steps and try to help other people. Maybe
Yeah, and
they
I don't
are.
even know if that's the case. There have been times when I haven't been
eh,
willing to grow or do anything, and I've just been a jerk, taking up space. And I have questioned why I've stayed sober through those periods. I don't know why I stayed sober and my younger brother died by suicide. I don't know. It seems like it might be a gift. It seems like it might be some grace. And then that sends into a whole spiral of,
It
well,
does.
God's grace bigger for this person than that. And I don't know, but what I do know is that the more that I live in gratitude and appreciation for truly a gift that I've been given with doing some bizarre stuff, and some of it's been right on time and perfect on target, and some of it's just been really weird.
At the risk of sounding like I'm on the spiritual mountaintop here,
Mm,
one thing that I have found interesting over the years is I've tried to help women who, chronically relapse or whatever you want to say, cannot stay sober, who seemingly need to get and stay sober, who have lost so much. There have been times in my sobriety where I have blatantly told people, like, you will not stay sober if you continue doing X, Y, or Z. And they continue doing it. And I think and they don't stay sober. And I think that where I have learned is that high bottom, low bottom? I don't know. Is that me taking on God's will? I don't know. But what I've learned over staying sober and listening to the people who have been sober specifically longer than me is that I don't have to tell those people that. Really, all I have to
Yeah.
need to do is read the book with them. The book tells them that. To your point, Marcie, it's like, well, yeah, like you have to be willing to do absolutely anything. And the women that I have seen, unfortunately, get divorced or lose a home or lose a car or go through things and stay sober in spite of that, come out the other side,
mhm,
better off for it. And I think that that has been my experience too. I lost so much more. My life got so much worse when I got sober.
mhm,
But there were always people around me willing to help who had been through things similar or not. And it was, am I willing to continue to do this work in Alcoholics Anonymous and help others? Um, and it has been interesting to see. Like, I don't need to tell people anymore, like, hey, you're going to drink again. Here's $5 for the bar. I think it sometimes, but I don't have
can
to
I
say
just have
it
the $5?
anymore,
Right.
which is, definitely growth for me. So,
Well, it just points to the the terms high bottom and low bottom. They They really don't exist in AA,
Yeah.
do they? I mean, or they create more questions than they do answers,
Hmm.
I guess.
You know, there have been times when I've needed certain things, and I'm glad that they were there for me.
Yeah. Maybe we should stick with what the book says.
Maybe,
And what
maybe.
that says is if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps.
There you go.
So if you've made a decision that you want to try it and you're willing to take some action, then take the steps and see what happens.
Hmm.
I think there is something to that gift, though, Marcie, because the day that I got sober, I wasn't trying to get sober.
Hmm.
I wasn't here.
I could tell you two specific times before that day that I was way worse off than I was that day.
Yeah.
The day I shot up that mange poison and tried to kill myself, I can assure you I was in bad shape that day.
Yeah.
And the day I walked into the Free Will Baptist Church and started praying with those folks and cried in front of everybody, I was in bad shape that day.
Yeah.
But I didn't get sober on either one of those times. The day I got sober, I wasn't even trying to. It's just,
Yeah. I poured out half a beer. I mean, that's disgusting. I have
yeah,
never wasted alcohol in all my life. It's so
Oh.
embarrassing. Like to talk about my last drink is just, oh my gosh. And what's really embarrassing is a dear friend of mine asked me if I wanted a beer. And I was so happy to be I hadn't drank for 30 whole days. And
Mm.
that was a record. And I actually during those 30 days got a job with my real social security number, my real name. And I was I had never my life
that's
was never looking stronger.
Mhm.
that's being honest.
There you
Man, I
go.
was on a roll.
Yeah.
And what it seems to me is that I, there was no humility or like appreciation or acceptance. I was making it happen. And what's interesting to me is the worst times sober have been when I have been making it happen. And when
Hmm.
I have remained grateful and humble, and it doesn't mean that it's interesting because when I am the most grateful and the most humble, that's when stuff it goes on a upward trajectory beyond belief, financially, spiritually, all of it. And people come into my life that um, I had no idea that I would have relationships with that I would.
Well, with all that being said, I'm going to go with no bottom. We don't know what'll happen. So I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, it
Yeah.
sounds like you can get and stay sober if you're either or neither of these. So
That's
there you
right.
go.
Yeah. So if you're low, high, or no, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Shank, you want
Yeah,
to
I
move
have
on to
some
meeting
great
shrapnel? Go ahead, Marcie. Finish.
I have some great clearances. I was just thinking about that when Shank was talking about her felonies. Man, I have some high level clearances that are unbelievable for an alcoholic. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely the Pollyanna of alcoholics sitting right here, if that's how we're measuring it.
All right.
So
We'll start calling you high bottom.
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
Call Shank
big
low.
bottom.
Call me no. Which, yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Enough of all this.
Oh, that's funny. Shank, let's go on to meeting shrapnel.
All right. Meeting Shrapnel, our segment of lore, myth, and sayings frequently heard in AA. Our first meeting shrapnel is yet. You're eligible too. What do you think about that one, Marcie?
Thanks. That's all I got. I just think it's great that you know what my life is. Or, yeah, all right.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. I don't have any.
Marcie, have you ever heard this one?
Yeah, but it's a lot like the bottoms. It's a lot of power.
Yeah.
And who are you to tell me what my life, what I'm eligible or ineligible for? Or
Yeah.
for me to tell you that. a lot of power.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe you're not eligible.
Yep.
What do I know? But what I like is the opposite of that. When there's work to be done, the walls come down. I heard somebody say that once or
Right.
twice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What I don't
Yet.
like about yet, it's not specifically you're eligible to, but the times that I hear yet are, and listen, if you've done this, I'm not specifically calling you out, but don't do it again. But people come up to me after I give a talk and they'll be like, yeah, prison and jail is just one of my yets. And I'm just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
okay, thanks for
And what I
sharing.
like is I wish I had gotten sober at 20 also. I mean, you have your whole life ahead of you, which I don't as much anymore because I've gotten old here. But I used to hear that a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you've got your whole life ahead of you. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly how I planned this Joker.
Right.
Because honestly, if I could have drank through my 30s, I would have, you idiot.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, you hear people, I've got a lot of yets out there.
Mhm.
What does that mean? You're eligible to. This is awful. Where did we get this one from? Didn't we just hear this somewhere?
I think we just heard it somewhere.
Well. Marcie, what do you want to do with this one? Keep it or scrap it?
You can do whatever you want. I ain't saying it.
All right, I'm scrapping it.
It's out of
Shame.
here. It's out
All
of
right.
here. Okay, so our next meeting shrapnel kind of fits with our high bottom, low bottom topic here. And it is you don't have to wait till the basement to get off the elevator.
I love this. I love this for you. Do you know how many times I have heard that? Because I guess because I am a high bottom alcoholic, and it's fantastic. I didn't have anything to lose, so I didn't lose anything, and again, it's a lot of power. If somebody could do something different about their drinking, I think that they would.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I surely would have. And there's no way I would have. Yeah, I would have drank through my 30s if I could have.
Well, maybe the three of us were young bottom alcoholics.
Well, there's that. There you go. Young bottom
Because
alcoholic.
No, Jerry,
And-
you were what, 25?
22.
26? Oh.
I just
okay, but
turned
you had
22, Marcie.
You had a whole year of legal drinking, brother.
okay, well,
That's
I was 24, so I'm the old bottom of this
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, you had a lot of legal drinking. If I had been able to drink legally, I think things would have been really different.
You may yet be a potential alcoholic. Marcie.
Absolutely potential over here. Absolutely.
I'm glad we raised the bottom so you could hit it.
That's right.
Well, I do appreciate you doing that for me. Thanks for bushwhacking
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah.
I'm glad you did that just for me too, because you knew me.
Yeah. It was obvious that's what we needed to do according to the 12 by 12.
Oh my god. So yeah, you don't. I think I sent in. You don't have to take the elevator all the way to the basement.
You
Yeah.
did.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. Can we just cut that one out? Take it, remove it, root and branch. Isn't that what it says about our character defects?
Well,
Just root and branch.
that
Get
sounds like
sucker.
a super scrap. You've
So
been
listen.
a previous guest.
We let
so-
previous guests do what they call a super scrap, but you got to call it.
I like root and branch, but I'll go with super because I really don't enjoy following the norm or the protocol. Quite frankly.
Well, we know that's why we're trying to get you to say it.
That's right.
Superstar scrap.
Super
Super
what?
scrap. Superstar.
All right. So you're scrapping
Super
it.
scrap. Super scrap.
It's out of here.
Yeah.
All
That's a
right.
super scrap. Okay. So our third meeting shrapnel is recovery doesn't open the gates of heaven and let you in. Recovery opens the gates of hell and lets you out.
Oh my God.
I didn't know that recovery was a living, breathing human.
You heard it here first.
Well, you learn a lot. You learn a lot on Alcoholics Live. This is one of the new things here.
Open up.
Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
What do you think about this one, Marcie?
I just, it confuses me. I really did not know recovery was a human that did things for me or otherwise. But I will tell you, having never been to heaven, I would say I have experienced it. So there is that. And I have experienced hell as well. Perhaps not like it is when you're locked up. I do like the story in the back of the book where he talks about he's jumping through the window or something. We read that in the prison one day, and and he talked about how being kicked out of school was probably like being incarcerated.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Don't let
reading
Shank,
that in
don't
the
let Shank
prison?
hear that.
Reading it in the prison, I was like, oh God, I think I am going to get shanked. Give me your corn dog stick. Awful. So, yeah, I
Um,
don't,
Have you ever
I
heard
have
this
been
one
in
or like a
hell.
version of it?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my experience is I have been in worse pain sober than drunk because most of my drinking was in a blackout. So I really wasn't awake or aware of so much the pain that I was experiencing until I woke up in sobriety and I realized all of the destruction of the aftermath. But I have
Hmm.
definitely been awake for some of the pain that I have caused and awake for some of the pain that I've experienced in sobriety. And so this has not been my experience.
Yeah. This one is one of those ones where if I was like newly sober and heard it, I would be like, wow, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
The big one was religion was for people afraid of hell and spirituality is for those
Yeah.
that have been to hell. That's
Yeah.
kind of what this reminds me of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that did put a boost of power into my
Oh
veins.
yes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep. But this one, I mean, I guess metaphorically it's kind of true, but it's got to be straight from a treatment center or some psychological recovery book.
Yeah.
I don't understand why
Right.
we're so unwilling to share our experience and instead we share these bizarre sayings and because really I think that's mentioned in our book that we share our experience, strength and hope, but yet we're terrified to share our experience.
You know, I think it's because a lot of this stuff comes from the treatment centers, and a lot of people that work in treatment centers don't have the experience.
They don't have
So it's
experience.
just like, let's say what sounds good, and people latch on to. There was a lot of stuff that I heard in treatment. And listen, when I was 6 months out of treatment, and one of the girls who had been in the treatment center ended up in prison with me, and she told me, like, it blew my mind when I found out that one of the treatment counselors was an Al-Anon. I was like, everything makes sense. She didn't have the experience. No wonder I didn't trust her, you know?
God, it's her fault you went to prison, Shank.
Obviously. I mean, she wasn't
Oh.
my counselor, but she did do a class I was in. So, I mean, it probably fits in
Oh
somewhere.
yeah.
Her name was Kathy. Never forget.
Can't try. Too bad it wasn't Karen. That would have been fantastic.
That would be fantastic.
Karen
Oh, my
adjacent,
goodness.
really.
Oh my goodness. Well, this
Yeah,
one,
I don't like this
you like
one.
it, Shank?
No, I don't. Because quite frankly, I went through more after I got sober than
Yeah.
I could have ever imagined. Drinking, and really none of that even matters because I went through a lot when I was a kid too. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, this doesn't make any real sense to my personal experience.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's just plain dumb.
So do you want to keep it or scrap it?
Get her out of here.
I'm
Get her out
scrapping
of
it.
here.
Oh, it's out of here. We're 3 for 3. We had a super scrap. I mean, there we go.
That's awesome. I don't
Strong.
think we've kept any in quite some time, have we?
I don't believe we have.
Well, if
Well-
we would share our experience, maybe there can be an experience segment. We can share our experience.
Yeah. Well, we'll take that under advisement, Marcie. Marcie, we appreciate you coming on and
Thank you, guys.
again with us and being such a great guest and sharing your experience with us. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. You can scrap that experience.
We'll scrap your experience later. Hey, for all the listeners, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for next week's segment on the Plain Language Big Book.
Ooh.
In the meantime, stay away from those bottoms and just share your experience, strength, and hope, and be free.
Freedom.
Thanks for listening. If you have a comment, suggestion, or just need help, you can email Shank and Wayne at freedom@alcoholicsalive.com. Remember, we're recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do we get paid. Join us next week for another great episode.